welcome to another Smaulgld live stream. It is Friday evening, the 17th of May, 2019. Welcome, Smaulgld mug stackers and game changers. It is Friday Night Crypto with Smaulgld. By popular demand, we will now dedicate Friday evenings to catching up on all of the crypto news of the week and with some further analysis. And don't forget, on Saturday night, we have Saturday Night Silver with Smaulgld. And on Sunday night, we have Solid Gold Sunday with Smaulgld. So we try to do a deep dive into each of those three assets. And then during the week, Monday through Thursday, we'll cover economics, news, politics, and whatever comes to mind. But tonight, we're going to take a look at a lot of the crypto stories. And it has indeed been a busy week. Yes, I see Ann is talking about rumors about a ETF being approved. We're going to discuss that. I've got some information on that. Might be the Van Eck CBOE ETF. And got Phil McCain. He's talking about how he has received his second Smaulgld mug, and he's indeed a rich man. All right, let's get into what's going on in the crypto space. This might take some time. I do have some Moranica and some other stories, but we might not get to them. We try to keep it to about an hour. We'll see what the audience is towards the end of the show. And if you want to carry on, I have more news. But we're going to start off with the cryptocurrencies, and that's what we're going to focus on this evening. All right. Now, what I normally do is I try to break it down into a couple of subheadings rather than just bombard you with information about what's going on in the crypto scene. I try to talk about adoption, institutionalization, which is a very, very big portion of what we've been talking about, price, and then regulatory and just general interest stuff. But I think I want to start with institutionalization because that has been my view on cryptos for the last 18 months, that once Wall Street saw that there was big money in this, with all these knuckleheads on YouTube making money on ICOs, and then retail investors driving Bitcoin up to 20,000, and all these startup companies from Coinbase to Wobi to Binance to Bitfinex, all these exchanges making fortunes on cryptocurrencies. I think that's when they realized, wait a minute, instead of fighting this is something that I think we can make a real lot of money on. And we've seen, even though when the crypto price began to fall in early 2018, it seemed as if Wall Street had already started the massive move into cryptocurrencies, from Fidelity to TD Ameritrade, ErisX, Van Eck, a whole bunch of mainstream institutions, Goldman Sachs, with its investments in Poloniex and Circle, into cryptocurrencies. And one of the things about cryptocurrencies that we've noted, which probably gave the institutions some comfort, that even though the prices were falling all through 2018, down 80%, 90, 95%, depending on the cryptocurrencies, this is something that had happened in the past. So tonight's topic is, here comes another crypto bubble. Saturday Night Crypto with Smaulgld, Friday Night Crypto with Smaulgld. I put Saturday night. The point being is that normally in a bubble or one-time bubble flash in the pan, like tulips, that is the end of it. The craze comes, the craze goes, and you never hear about tulips ever again in the speculative context. Beanie Babies, things like that. In other speculative markets, they can happen all the time. NASDAQ, Dow Jones. There was a bubble in 1929 in the stock market. There was a bubble in 1987 in the stock market. There was a bubble in 2008 in the stock market. There was a bubble in 2000 in the stock market, in the NASDAQ market, the dot-com market. These are bubbles. There was a bubble in silver in 1980. There was a bubble in gold in 1980. There was a bubble in gold and silver in 2011. These are bubbles that happen, but they're evergreen bubbles because the assets don't go away. And I think by 2017, when Wall Street saw yet again another bubble, was that this would be something that they would feel comfortable putting their money behind because they knew they could run up another bubble. And indeed, this guy, Eric Voorhees, who's been involved with Bitcoin since 2011, I believe, he made a very interesting point. He said bubbles are an essential part of Bitcoin's growth. That's absolutely true. It is a boom and bust cycle that happens in Bitcoin, and I believe, and this is not investment advice, nothing in this investment advice, it's just that I believe that what I see not investment, but Wall Street and Silicon Valley doing is rallying behind an asset that they know that they can pump to the moon when Lambo. So Voorhees says Bitcoin bubbles are an essential part of Bitcoin's growth, and then says it won't become $1 trillion asset without more bubbles. Well, think of all the money there is in that. Riding this next bubble up and then shorting it on the way down and then riding it up even higher than the last one and then shorting it on the way down. And this clearly is not for the faint of heart. And I think this bubble will be bigger than the last one, and then the next one will be even bigger than that one. Because if you think of the opportunity, it's not just Bitcoin, it's introducing tokens for any possible thing. We'll talk about some of the tokens later tonight. But then each entity, like Facebook, they can issue a token. JP Morgan can issue a token. And then every entity itself can issue a token, a digital token. Well, think of all the money there is in raising capital around tokens, selling tokens, trading tokens, shorting tokens, storing tokens, and then you get the picture that this is as big, if not bigger, potentially for bankers than the Wall Street, the dot-com bubbles. Everyone went dot-com. And now every company, there's no such thing as a dot-com company. Every company has a website, a dot-com. And I believe every company will eventually have its own token. And there'll be new companies issuing tokens as well. Now, he's also talking about Bitcoin taking over the world here. You can see, all right, but you never know. I mean, I try not to get into the hyperbole of all this stuff, but I think this is clearly what is happening is you're seeing a big expansion of the cryptocurrency ecosystem. And why do I say that? Well, now, Coinbase, which is like the AOL of cryptocurrency, as AOL was to the internet. Now, Coinbase gets a lot of crap. And a lot of people don't like Coinbase, and they're notorious for having bad service. But that's not the point. That is not a cut against Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency. That's just a new trading platform that came about that was the first that went mainstream. And I think it's very, very similar to AOL. It's the one that AOL got people online, introduced them to .com, introduced them to consuming content online, introduced them to visiting websites. Coinbase is the same thing. It may be horrible, but I don't think it's horrible. But what I mean is it may have its flaws, and it may be expensive. They may have struggles with customer service, but it has brought 20 million accounts online, and to a certain extent it is normalizing or introducing mainstream people into cryptocurrencies. Now, they also have some institutional products. We're not going to get into Coinbase tonight, but the point is here, Coinbase has now expanded service to 50 more countries. They've launched their US dollar coin support to 85 jurisdictions. So clearly, Coinbase is having an impact. And here's the thing. Coinbase is a startup. Coinbase is, maybe it's Silicon Valley backed, but when Fidelity, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, all of these online TD Ameritrade companies see the amount of revenues that Coinbase or Binance or Bitfinex or Huobi or any of these startup cryptocurrency trading platforms making all this money, they say, whoa. If people are going to trade, that's our business. We do trading. We sell stocks, we trade bonds. They want a piece of it. So, at one point, maybe Coinbase won't be the leader. They probably won't be. They'll probably go public. They'll be big, but there'll be others. And of course, eventually, I think that all major trading platforms will simply just add on cryptocurrency to theirs. And the reason they'll do it is Coinbase, essentially, and Binance and some of the others blazed a pathway showing that there is a lot of money in trading cryptocurrencies. Of course, there's also a lot of money in storing cryptocurrencies. And Coinbase is all over that as well. Coinbase is buying companies and trying to get into the storage business. Well, now Binance, which is the world's largest crypto trading platform, experienced a hack of about 7,000 Bitcoin, and they covered it with their Bitcoin that they had in cold storage, so they did not have to take any haircut from any of their clients or give a haircut to any of their clients, and they're now reopened again. It seems to have gone off without a hitch, but again, highlighting you're in early days here with trading platforms and understanding how to secure them and how to operate them. So Binance is now back online. Let's talk a little bit more about adoption, because we mentioned Coinbase, and Coinbase has been a key entity in promoting adoption. But we're seeing here now TD Ameritrade, which is the complete opposite of Coinbase. It's not a startup. It's been around for a while. They're saying that tens of thousands of their clients are interested in crypto. What does that mean? It means they got to get their platform up and running. They've invested in ErisX. ErisX already has an over-the-counter trading business up and running, but they haven't had their institutional trading platform set up. But eventually, it looks like that's how they're going. If you think about the Wall Street model, they promote Silicon Valley companies often, or other companies that they find on their own that they promote. They bring in the institutions after Silicon Valley has invested in them in their first round, second rounds. And then before they go public, they make the rounds. They do what's called a road show. And they say, look, we got this hot IPO. Why don't you invest in it? And they want to, of course, all of the institutions want to appease the bankers, because they know that if they buy this IPO, they'll be on the list to buy all the IPOs. So they may even buy garbage just to make sure that they're on the list to get the hot ones. So they do a road show, and then the institutions buy into the pre-IPO stock, and then Wall Street launches the IPO. IPO goes up at a price, and then they boost it even higher for the next few years. And then everyone who's invested in it, from the original seed capital investors in Silicon Valley all the way up to the institutional investors who invested right before the IPO, they all make a fortune. Well, it looks like they're following the same pathway here now, whereas in 2017, before, all of the Bitcoin bubbles were driven by individual investors. What's happened, what looks like is happening now, is Wall Street is getting its foot in the water here, and they seem to be following the same path that they normally follow, which is they set up the trading platform, they put their investments in a lot of these trading platforms, like Goldman Sachs has an investment in Circle, which has an investment in Poloniex, which is a trading platform. They invest in stable coins. They invest in the preliminaries, and then they go out to the institutions and they say, hey, you want to invest in this fund, you want to invest in Bitcoin, you want to put money into an ETF, you want to put money into an investment trust like the Grayscale Trust, you want to put money into whatever it is. And then they launch, and then they set up a trading platform. Do you want to trade on the over-the-counter on ErisX? That launched last week. And then do you want to have institutional accounts set up so you can trade on this account? Do you want to have your Bitcoin, Litecoin, whatever it is, stored? We've got that set up. And then after all that goes on, that'll probably take 6 months to a year, they'll open it up to the retail investors. When they open up to the retail investors, by then everything's already taken off. So it's a classic case of how Wall Street likes to operate, except in this case, those people who had invested in cryptocurrencies from 2009 to 2017, they were ahead of them, and that probably really annoys the the Wall Street, and that's why they're getting involved now. So that's TD Ameritrade. What else do we have here? Now, other things with adoption, you're just starting to see this all creep into place here. Here is wild crypto market traders get something new, FDIC protection. So this particular company is offering when you cash out that they'll put your money in an FDIC protected bank account. This ties into my theme that Bitcoin, in many instances, it's simply going to be integrated into the payment system, integrated into the financial trading systems, integrated into everything financial, integrated into supermarkets. Now, there will be peer-to-peer exchanges that take place outside of all of the regular Wall Street, Main Street type transactions, but for the most part, I think they're trying to corral a good portion of it into their system. Now, speaking of supermarkets, Bitcoin ATMs. Now, how to start a Bitcoin ATM? Is it profitable? Now, I've spoken to people who run these things. They are profitable. And the reason they're profitable is you buy a machine for anywhere from $300 to like $1,300. And then after that, it's just a matter of how, if you have space in your store to keep the thing, then it's just a matter of you take a cut on every transaction. They're not really the way to mainstream, I would imagine, adoption, because currently the Bitcoin ATMs are, let me see what I have here on Bitcoin ATMs. The amount of them is not, I think they're at about 4,800. Yeah, here we go, 4,800 ATMs. That's a lot, but that's worldwide. Now, in America, I believe there's over 3,000 ATMs, and a lot of them are expensive. You put cash in and you pay a price that's higher. However, it does show that there is a demand for people to use these machines. Otherwise, a merchant would not put a machine in its valuable floor space unless there was money to be made. And I'm sure they make more money than selling Coke or Pepsi, because the average transaction size is going to be hundreds of dollars, not $1.25 to buy a Coke. Yeah, so it looks like there's over 3,000 Bitcoin ATMs in the United States, and that number has doubled in the last year, even though we've had this go down. It's indicative. I don't think that Bitcoin growth is going to be driven by Bitcoin ATMs, but it does highlight that it's a portion of the market that's also growing, along with just general adoption. Speaking of just retail investment, now I calculated this, the amount of Bitcoin that was sold versus the amount of gold and silver was sold at the U.S. Mint. It looks like it's more this past first quarter. Grayscale has sold $43 million worth of crypto. This is just Grayscale and Square. This doesn't include any other exchange where people are buying Bitcoin like Coinbase or Poloniex or Kraken or Gemini. It's just these two is over 100 million. Square Cash App sold 65 million Bitcoin in the first quarter, and that's simply people just opening their Cash App, going to Bitcoin, and then hitting buy, and it's very easy to do. And $65 million worth of Bitcoin, or 17,000 Bitcoin, were sold in the first quarter. So it's definitely a growing thing. A lot of people, they try to say, well, it's not going anywhere because not everyone is using it. Well, if everyone was using it, then the Bitcoin would be $150,000. That's the point. It's in a growing phase. And you're seeing these incremental growth of all these things like ATMs and Square purchases and Grayscale. So if you look at Square's or Cash App's Bitcoin purchases, they were 32 million a year ago, and now they're 65 million in the first quarter a year later. That's a doubling. You don't see that in other, you don't see the silver sales doubling, the gold sales doubling. This is definitely a nascent market where you're seeing big gains on a quarter to quarter and year over year basis. Now, the other thing that's happening with adoption are these phone companies. HSTC has added in-wallet in-wallet crypto swaps to his Exodus phone. They're doing this because there's demand for it. And there's another thing that they're doing, HTC. This other phone they have allows crypto users to store and send Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin and swap 60 plus ERC tokens on the new smartphone. Now remember, everything is moving towards smartphone, away from desktop. That's where everything happens. Payments are taking place on phones. You hold up your, in fact, anyone who's interested in doing so and testing it out, all you have to do is hold up your phone to a QR code and you can send Bitcoin or Litecoin or Ethereum in an instant. And that's a very big deal because it's the rapidity of payments. Now, I do, just talking about Smaulgld, I do accept snail mail donations and I do get them. But it does take people, and thoughtful people who do it, to sit down, write a letter, add a check, put some cash in. I have some people put some very interesting things in the envelopes. But it does take time and it does take thought. However, if you're interested in making donations, a simple way is just holding up your phone and sending Bitcoin or Litecoin just by looking at those two QR codes. So it is definitely a people who are used to living off of their phones, using Twitter on their phone, using Facebook on their phone, whatever they do, doing on their phones, making payments. These are things that the phone companies are well aware of in adding new features to the phones, and they're adding crypto features to the phones. Now, the big one, Samsung, let's see what they're doing. Samsung is coming out with a new phone, and let's see where they are with the Samsung. Here's Samsung. They're rolling out crypto features on budget Galaxy phones. So this isn't just some high-end thing. This is for all the people. They're going to bring crypto and blockchain features to more phones. So this is something that's happening, and I think when people look at it, because it hasn't already happened, they knock it and they say, well, it's you guys are talking about. And it's true. A lot of the Bitcoin hypers and pumpers, they act like Bitcoin is already the world reserve currency. And that gets very easy to dispute because it's not. And they act like Bitcoin is gold, and it's not. But the point is that I try to do is look at this stuff and show what's happening. And there's clearly a lot of stuff happening. It's not, quote, taking over the world. But incrementally, we're seeing more and more of this adoption. And that's how I look at things, is incrementally. I don't look at Big Bang type theories where something's going to happen all at once. We're just seeing, and that's why I report on these things. That's why I think Friday night with crypto with Smaulgld is important, because we're showing all of these things. They're all incremental. None of them are game changers as such. Here's one, Brave Browser. Now, the reason the Brave Browser is important is because it represents a new business model. And a lot of the crypto tokens, and maybe many of them will fail, represent new models. The model on this Brave Browser is that it's a Chrome browser. Because it's open source. What it does is it has a built-in ad blocker. And you say, well, that's no big deal. You can add an ad blocker to Chrome if you want. But this one comes with the ad blocker. It's already blocked. And then it allows you to earn tokens, these BAT tokens, which I've signed up for. So I have some BAT and basic attention token. And you click on ads if you want to click on them. They come at the bottom of the screen. And for looking at them, you get paid whatever, a certain BAT. And then you say, well, that's not good for the website companies because they're going to get hosed. Well, if you, let's say you come to smaulgld.com and you've got your BAT browser on, you're not going to see any of the ads that I have on the site, which I really don't have that many. But let's say I was living off of ads on the Smaulgld site. You could then go on your BAT browser and donate BAT to Smaulgld, and that's like a new model. So it does change the dynamic of how, if this takes off, of how people would consume media, how it would be paid for, and what the advertising model would be. So it's not just about Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies. That's not really a cryptocurrency. That's a business model that has a token. All right, so we talked about the phones. Well, here's an interesting one. Is Peter Schiff. Now, see, this is where when your own hubris gets in the way. This guy has been, Peter Schiff, has been trashing Bitcoin since it was like $8 a Bitcoin. And insisting that one day when the world realizes it's fake and it's phony and it's unbacked and that gold is the best and blah, 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 that a Bitcoin's going to go to zero, whatever he says. But then, he goes to this conference and he says Bitcoin buyers are dumb, inexperienced kids. All right. So, first of all, you want to sell gold. That's not the way I would sell gold. I mean, the way I would sell gold, the way I would say, look, in fact, I did have a concept of the way I would sell gold, and it really is, how do I put it? When people talk about gold, they talk about, when the people talk about gold, people talk about Bitcoin. What they do is they complain about what Bitcoin isn't. Like, what's going to happen if the lights go out? What's going to happen if there's a EMP and you can't use your Bitcoin? Well, that's actually looking at it the wrong way. Because what's going to happen if the lights don't go out? So what what these people do is they look at things the way they look at everything as what if. Gold bugs look at everything as what if instead of what is. Because if you can make money on what is happening, meaning cryptocurrencies are going up, Tesla's going up, whatever the nonsense that you think is not real or is rigged. That's what's happening. Now, there's a risk that won't happen, but that's why you buy gold. You don't buy gold instead of what is. You buy gold because of what if. And I don't think that most people who like gold think that the chances are that everything's going to collapse. Okay, well then you have your insurance. But the chances are, and it's just proven historically, for most of the world history, things are not in collapse form. They're actually doing quite well. And I think that's the big mistake. And so someone like Peter is always preaching this doom and gloom. And therefore, people who don't follow that point of view are what he calls dumb and inexperienced. Now, I think it's dumb and inexperienced to throw everything at what is, meaning what's moving higher, without having a proper hedge, which is what if, which is gold, or possibly silver. But to just call people dumb and inexperienced, it's the same thing when people say, people in Asia are smart. They understand gold. They buy gold. And Americans are dumb. No, that's not true. If Americans have a higher standard of living than people in Asia, like China or Thailand or whatever, then they're not dumb. How are they dumb? Well, they say, well, they're borrowing money. Well, you don't think China's borrowing money? China's borrowing even more money. Anyway, so Peter's saying Bitcoin buyers are dumb and inexperienced. Well, also, he should know his market, because a poll here at the same conference that he was at trashing the dumb, inexperienced millennials showed, what do you think? Are millennials more likely to buy gold or Bitcoin? I don't know if they had heard Peter at the conference. This is the SALT conference he was at, but only 9%. 1 in 10 would buy gold, and 9 out of 10 would buy Bitcoin. Now, I don't think calling them dumb and inexperienced is going to encourage them to buy gold. What might encourage them to buy gold is explaining that it's nice that you've made a good investment in your Bitcoin, but keep in mind, here are some risks with Bitcoin. Bitcoin could be hacked. You could have poor storage. You could lose your Bitcoin. You could forget your seed code. You could have an issue with lack of electricity, an EMP, whatever. Governments could ban it. Whatever the downsides to Bitcoin would be. And instead of trying to compare gold to Bitcoin and then say, well, you can compare gold to Bitcoin and say, in those circumstances, gold is still going to work. So I think you might want to put a little of your money over into the gold side. But instead, trashing them and saying you shouldn't buy any Bitcoin, you're dumb and inexperienced and you should only buy gold. I don't know if that's the winning strategy. What do you guys think? We'll check your comments when I get through with all the stories we're going through here. Let's see, what else? Have we got anything else here? Okay, that's it on adoption. Here's another one you get all the time. Bitcoin isn't money, gold is money, period. Well, first of all, who cares if something is money? If you make money, so to speak, or profit on something, I don't care what you call it. And the argument I like to use is palladium is not money. Silver is money, period. Silver's been money for 5,000 years. Well, that hasn't helped silver in the last 10 years because palladium has outperformed silver by a massive margin, and palladium's not money. So who cares if something is money? I also hear this stuff, people talking about, well, someone he doesn't make a good argument. Who cares what the argument is? The only argument that matters to me is what the market says. If the market assigns value to something, I don't care if Peter Schiff or Jim Rickers or whoever makes better arguments. They're arguing with themselves. They're impressing people that don't matter because it's the market that determines it, not some person who says, well, I think Peter is right. Who cares? If the market says Bitcoin is worth more, a Bitcoin is worth more than an ounce of gold, then a Bitcoin is worth more than an ounce of gold, no matter what argument you may be persuaded by. All right, it doesn't matter if the goal is to make a profit. If the goal is to determine which is more suited to commerce, that is not going to be solved via argument or intellect, but rather by the market. I think people get too tied into listening to YouTubes and listen to people pontificate and explain themselves like I do, and they think that somehow is reality. Just like when you see the gold-silver ratio, people talking about silver. It should be 1-to-1. This guy doesn't know what he's talking about. It should be 16 or 15, 1-to-1. What does he know? What does he know? No, what does he know? He knows that the gold-silver ratio isn't anywhere near 16-to-1, isn't anywhere near 15-to-1, isn't anywhere near, and is never going to be 1-to-1. And yet, because they've binge-watched this nonsense, they actually believe that they believe against reality. The reality is the gold-silver ratio is not near 16-to-1. And in fact, they've been making this argument since it was 55-to-1. And now, what is the gold-silver ratio? We're not talking about gold and silver. We're talking in general about people believing more in what the markets tell them than in what they believe more in what arguments tell them than what the market is telling them. The gold-silver ratio right now is 88-to-1. I don't care who makes a better argument. The point is, it's not 60. It's not 1-to-1. It's not 16-to-1, and it's not 1-to-1. All right. What else do we have here? Now, institutionalization is a very, very big deal going on, and some are saying that the reason the Bitcoin price rose recently is due to its maturation as an asset. Okay. I mean, I think it's because Wall Street is looking at it as a more mature asset. It definitely is. I mean, it's been around over 10 years as a market cap $130 billion. But we're also seeing Bitcoin trading volume creeping up record amounts. I mean, they're now trading 1 billion notional volume. For people who are saying this is nothing, because it's not the same size as gold or it's not the same size as something else, still missing the point. It's $1 billion in notional value on the CME's trading. Well, so I think we got this story a couple of places here. CME trading volume, there it is. Hit 1.3 billion amid parabolic advance. Custody. We talked about custody the other day. Custody is a very big deal. Here's why. Institutions. Everyone's, institutions, they don't need banks. They just go out and do it on their own. That's the Bitcoin fanatic argument. That's not true. They can't. They won't. They're not allowed to store their stocks or their gold or their silver, their Bitcoin themselves. By regulation, they have to store it with, in many instances, a 40 Act compliant entity. So they can't just say, they can't just round up their institutional investors and say, "Oh, I'll just go out and buy 2,000 Bitcoin. I'll store them on my treasure, and I'll keep the cold wallet in the safe deposit box." Now that may be safe and everything, but the point is, they're not allowed to do that. So they need a third-party storage. This is the issues they're having with the ETF, which we're going to get to. The ETF issue. So storage is a big business. We see a lot of like backed buying storage companies, and we see here Coinbase negotiating to buy a storage company as well. It's a big race here because there's big money in storage, because institutions have to have the storage. They can't just say they're going to store it on the self-store. Here's one, Huobi, which was opened up just as Coinbase did, as a retail cryptocurrency exchange, are now offering institutional over-the-counter. So again, institutions moving into cryptocurrencies is moving this. Now this legendary investor flips. This is interesting. This is almost the equivalent of Warren Buffett liking crypto. This guy, legendary investment guru, just flipped on Bitcoin. From Bitcoin is a fraud to, quote, "I believe Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies of that type are going to be alive and well." And that is this Mobius guy. Let me show you him here. Yep, Bitcoin will be alive and well, says renowned emerging market investors Mark Mobius. I mean, it's reality. I can understand saying it's nonsense when it first came out on your own opinion, like I did. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was a ridiculous concept. But the point is, I don't choose what's going to work and what doesn't. If markets are choosing it as and valuing it, who am I to say that it's not worth anything? All right. What else do we have here? Bitcoin taking over the world. Now, the price of Bitcoin is very interesting. It soared last week. I mean, you had this massive rise of Bitcoin up to 8,000, and then you had a sell-off. They claim it was due to the huge price drop here, because Bitcoin suffers biggest intraday price drop for over a year. Now that's in dollar terms, and the only reason it could drop that much is it rose that much. But it went from like $8,200, $8,300 down to $6,900. Litecoin went from $107, a big spike, down to about $82. And they say this was all due to, and this does highlight a risk in the market, a whale selling Bitcoin that crashed the price over $1,000. Now the price today of Bitcoin rose from about $7,100 to $7,400. So it's made up a lot of those losses. But that was basically, they're saying on Bitstamp, 5,000 Bitcoin were sold, and that triggered selling across all of the exchanges, and it drove the price down. So it's clearly a small market that is subject to these types of melt-ups and melt-downs. And we saw Ethereum spike. Ethereum went up almost to $300. I think it went down to about $220, and I think right now Ethereum is at, it's about $248 at the moment, almost $250. And Litecoin, as I mentioned, spiked all the way up to $107, $108. And they noted it here, hit 11-month high above $100, and then it went down to the 80s. But I think right now Litecoin is well over $90. Yeah, it's at $90.30. So definitely a lot of movement in all of these coins. And the other thing that happened was, if you remember, Bitcoin was the one that shot out of the gate last week and the next few days. It wasn't until just 2 days ago that the altcoins started to catch up, and they call that alt season. And Bitcoin that particular day on the 15th of May was flat. But Ethereum was up 15%, Litecoin 13%, Binance Coin 15%, Stellar 13%, Cardano 12%, 13%, Tron 14%, IOTA 18%, BAT 8%, Ethereum Classic almost 18%, Tezos up 24%, And then Bitcoin fell the next day, which was yesterday, sharply, and they all fell with it. And then today it looks like they're all rising in tandem, although trying to make up. They made up about half of their losses from yesterday. So clearly a lot of volatility in the market. Now, some people are saying it wasn't just the whale that are buying or selling, but that it's China's. China's fears drive, currency fears drive China into Bitcoin and Forbes. That may be part of it. I don't think that's all of it. I do think a lot of it had to do with the opening of RSX institutional trading last week, general institutional issues, and just a confluence of events. I don't think it's just Chinese buying. I do believe, however, that this was not driven by the same people that drove up the prices in 2017, i.e. the individuals. Individuals, I think, will come in on the FOMO if Wall Street is successful in pushing up its own bubble. Speaking of bubbles, Max Kaiser, he's got a modest price target compared to some of the others. He's saying $100,000 Bitcoin. He thinks that is quite achievable. That's not really a ridiculous price target compared to some of the others. Now, here is an interesting one, and it ties into my belief that banks, rather than being afraid of Bitcoin, will integrate it into the payments and financial systems and make a fortune. That's my whole Bitcoin, crypto, Wall Street bubble. In this interview, Left for Dead, Bitcoin goes on a tear and sparks a new mania. The guy who is working, who's interviewed, he's talking about Flexa. Now, Flexa is a company that's a payment app, and the Winklevoss twins were working with it. And Flexa is accepted now by Whole Foods, Lowe's, a whole bunch of big name retailers. And part of the Flexa system is that you can load your Flexa app with, I think it's Bitcoin, Bitcoin Cash, Ethereum, not Litecoin, and you can then spend them at the point of sale. Now, the company that, like Whole Foods, accepting Flexa payments doesn't know whether they're getting their Flexa payment, the origin is Bitcoin or it's Ethereum, or whether it's cash or credit. They don't know, but the end result is that the merchant is accepting cryptocurrencies because you can use that. And that actually highlights, that's the integration that I'm talking about. The merchant never knows they're accepting Bitcoin, and yet that money or that value of the Bitcoin is being pushed into, it's not just being hoarded or hodled, it's being put into the payment system. And that's incremental money, because if people make money or the price of Bitcoin rises from 3,000 to 10,000, well, that's incremental value in the system that can be spent. And if it can be spent, it's stimulative to the economy. And that's why I also think that governments are in favor of this, because when the person spends his or her Bitcoin at 10,000, they have a capital gain of 7,000 that they're going to pay tax on. So that's good for the government. And it's not like they're going to be able to say, "Oh, I just won't pay it," because no, it's trackable. I mean, if you're buying something from a merchant, you're ordering online, it's not like it's some type of anonymous transaction. And that's good for that's a good thing. That's good for the government. It's good for the merchant. Hey, and it's good for the person who has a gain from 3,000 to 10,000, and it's good for the Flexa company with the spend app. It's good for the trading platforms. It just puts more money into the system. For the Bitcoin fanatics or the Bitcoin pumpers, they want all this money outside the system. They view Bitcoin as a threat to the system. It's going to bring the system down, be your own central bank, and all that other nonsense. But really what's happening is it's just all moving into the mainstream and making the existing financial systems and payment systems more efficient. And that is really good news for everybody. It's good news for the government. It's good news for the banks. It's good news for the hodlers. All right. Let's see what we have here. We already saw that one on the bubbles. By the way, the Litecoin, those you don't understand, halving, what's built into all the schedules of most of the coins is a halving where you get, as a miner, you get a certain number of Bitcoin or Litecoin as a reward, and then after a few years, you get half of that. So it makes it harder, you get less, and eventually it's part of, unlike in gold or silver mining, where you can keep finding new deposits and mining more. And in fact, mining of gold and silver has increased over the last 10 years, where the amount of Bitcoin and Litecoin being mined going forward will be less and less and less because of the halving and because they have a hard stop. Bitcoin at 21 million, Litecoin at 84 million. So like a Bitcoin is already mined out of the 21 million, like 17, 18 million. There's very few Bitcoin left to be mined. Litecoin is a little further behind. I think it's like 64, 65 million out of the 84 million, but it's pretty much almost done too. And so each year going forward after a halving, it's even fewer and fewer coins coming to market. And then, of course, during the last 10 years for Bitcoin and the last 7 years for Litecoin, many of them have been lost. So even though there's 21 million Bitcoin that will ever be mined, 84 million Litecoin will ever be mined, they estimate that 4 or 5 Litecoin have already been lost out of the 18 million that have been mined. So you're already down to 14 million. There's another 3 million to be mined. So probably when they finish mining, and it goes way out because it keeps halving every few years. But really the bulk of the Bitcoins have already been mined, and in the next 5 years, pretty much all of them will be mined, even though it'll continue to have new coins, but it'll be very, very hard to get many Bitcoins from mining going out. That there's really only going to be 14, 15 million Bitcoin available once, in the next few years. All right. The other thing is you're seeing it all the time. At least I'm seeing it. Yahoo is just covering, and Yahoo's mainstream stuff. And why are they talking about Litecoin? 3 Litecoin subreddits you should start following. This is from Yahoo Finance. I mean, this just shows that I believe that there's some type of pumping going on because, I don't know. I don't think that the interest in Litecoin is that great that Yahoo should be running articles telling you there's 3 Litecoin subreddits. Also, Reddit, too, is the other thing. Pushing them into Reddit. But I do digress a bit there. All right, have we done the institutions? Yes, I think we've covered institutions. We've covered some recent adoption stories. And we've covered price pretty much, I think. Yep. Now, the biggest one here now is this SEC thing that's going on. So, let's talk about the SEC. Now, the SEC has not been hostile to Bitcoin. As we've mentioned, the SEC has set up sec.gov /ICO. And they saw during 2016 and 17 all of these ICOs going out. They were unregistered. And technically, for the most part, most of those coins, those tokens that were issued, were in violation of the U.S. securities laws. Now, why do I say that? Because there's a difference between a cryptocurrency and an ICO token. An ICO token is very similar to a security. It meets the Howey test. It means that you're relying on someone or something to do something to give value. So, for example, if you buy a stock in Uber or Tesla, you're hoping that Elon Musk and his crew are going to make you money. That's what a security is. You base your value of what you might get in your security, in your stock of Tesla, based on what those guys do and selling cars and making profits, which they don't, but the stock goes up anyway. But that's a different story. The idea of a security is that's what you're relying on. Now, the reason that Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum are not securities are no one's doing anything. Just as a dollar bill is not a security, really, there's an issuer, but they're not doing anything to make the value. They are. In the dollar's case, the government is doing stuff, but it's not a security. You're not buying with the expectation that it goes up or down. You're buying it as a store of value, or you're buying it as a currency, means of exchange. You're not counting on the government pushing the value of the dollar higher or lower. They're not a corporation. So that's basically the difference. So Bitcoin and Litecoin and Ethereum, they say now Ethereum, due to its decentralized nature, they're not securities. However, the tokens are. And because the tokens are considered securities, that doesn't mean that the SEC wants to outlaw them or ban them. They want them just to be registered. This ties into regulation. Registration of a security means not that the SEC approves it, but it means that you have a token, you have an IPO or an ICO, whatever it is. They want you to bring it to the SEC, and the only way you can bring it to the SEC generally is if you know what you're doing, and if you know what you're doing means you hire lawyers and accountants and bankers, and you help put together a registration statement, and you pay the SEC thousands, tens of, even hundreds of thousands of dollars, depending on the size of your IPO, ICO, to review it. The SEC reviews it, and then eventually they declare it. You put in all the information, the material information, make sure there's no omissions, and including you put in the financials, all the risk factors, and then the SEC eventually, through a lot of back and forth and negotiation with lawyers, accountants, and the bankers, and the company's input, will declare the registration statement effective. It's a long process. It's designed to give investors some, I guess, not security, but assurance that it is what it is, and the company has put in its efforts to meet the regulatory disclosure requirements, and now you can invest in this. We're not saying it's a good investment. We're not saying it's a bad investment. We're not saying it's a safe investment. We're just saying there's enough information in here from which you can make a decision being fully apprised of the risks of this company. All right, so that's what the SEC is about. And the SEC is neutral on Bitcoin, Litecoin, Ethereum, tokens. They don't care. What they want is, if people are going to throw their money at this stuff, they want ICOs to fully disclose what's going on. Now, the SEC has said if Bitcoin isn't a security, they've got nothing to do with it. They are not the ones who are going to regulate it, because there's no one in charge of Bitcoin. There's no one in charge of Litecoin. Charlie Lee is not in charge of Litecoin. Litecoin is set up as a decentralized currency, just like Bitcoin. There is no Bitcoin corporation that is responsible for the issuance of Bitcoin. Therefore, the SEC is not involved. But when you issue a token, then the SEC is involved. Now, who regulates Bitcoin? Well, they've deemed that Bitcoin is not a security, but it's a commodity. So it falls under the CFTC, and that's why BACT is working with the CFTC to get its Bitcoin trading system set up. However, you say, well, why is the SEC looking at the Bitcoin ETF put together by Bitwise and the Winklevoss twins, all the 12, 13 different Bitcoin ETFs? If Bitcoin isn't a security, why is the SEC looking at the Bitcoin ETF, and why is it the SEC is going to determine whether Van Eck and CBOE can issue a Bitcoin ETF? Well, because when you put a non-security like gold or silver or Bitcoin into a tradable vehicle like an ETF, then it becomes a security. It's not the underlying asset in the security that makes it a security. It is the idea that you're going to issue exchange-traded fund shares, and therefore it's subject to the SEC. All right, so what's happening now with the SEC is there have been a number of Bitcoin ETFs that have been filed. There's now an Ethereum ETF There's also a hybrid Bitcoin ETF with some other stuff mixed in there, other currencies, foreign currencies. But none of them have been approved so far. And what's holding them up is the SEC has said they're concerned about the markets, whether the SEC can look at those markets, do market surveillance agreements, and understand what's going on, whether there's fraud in the markets. And what Bitwise did was very interesting. They freely admitted that 95% of Bitcoin trading is probably fraudulent, but then they showed like 10 exchanges where they said this is real trading. These 10 exchanges, this is where real price discovery takes place. They've got market surveillance agreements in place, and this is where the price really is determined. I don't know if the SEC bought off on that, but that's what they said. And then the other issue is, before they approve an ETF, is how is the entity that's sponsoring the ETF going to store the Bitcoin? What type of insurance will they have? Where will it be held? How will they make amends if it's lost? And so on. And those are all items that are solvable, but they just haven't approved it yet. So there's a woman named Hester Pierce. I always want to call her Hester Prynne from the Scarlet Letter, but her name is Hester Pierce. And she is a woman who is one of the commissioners. I think there's 3 to 5. I'm not quite sure the number of commissioners that they have. There's a head of the SEC, but then there's commissioners, and they vote on these types of things. And for the last few ETFs, she's voted for it with 1 or 2 of her other commissioners, and then the others outvoted. It's been a close vote, but the majority of the SEC commissioners have said, not yet. No, we're not going to approve a Bitcoin ETF. But Hester Prynne, not Hester Prynne, Hester Pierce has been in favor of these most of the ETFs, and the most recent one was the Bitwise one was not approved. And Bitwise is the one who, as I mentioned, gave all that information on the market, said, look, here's 10 good markets that you guys can look at, 10 markets that are not subject to manipulation, 10 markets that have decent volume, decent trading, and here's how we intend to store it. But the SEC delayed. They didn't deny. They delayed a decision on Bitwise, and it goes on, I guess, another 45 days. The way that's set up is you put it in your proposal, then you got a 45-day period, then if you say no, they tell you to go back and sharpen your pencil and fix whatever it is. Then you got another, I don't know, the 45, 60-day, whatever it is. I think they can delay it 3 times. So it might be for Bitwise, they might get delayed again, and then it might be towards the end of the year. And then they may just tell you, no, sorry, you didn't make it this time. Now, what's interesting is, and this is the last speculation of the evening before we take your comments, is Van Eck has probably got the best shot of any of the ETF companies. It's the most well-known. They've got a gold, I think they do GDX. They've got a lot. I mean, GDX is very important because gold mining shares, that kind of stuff is very, it's similar to the Bitcoin, and they had that stuff approved by the SEC. Also, working with Van Eck, which is a big ETF company, is CBOE, which, interestingly enough, used to have a Bitcoin futures exchange. They followed on quite quickly after the CME group, and then back in March or April, they suddenly canceled their futures contract for Bitcoin. A lot of people said, oh, it's because Bitcoin, no one's trading Bitcoin anymore. And I thought, that's not true. Because we were seeing even back then, this is before the big run-up, that the CME group was getting big volume. And I thought, it's either because, or that the CBOE group wasn't doing as well as the CME group, which makes sense because the CME group is like the company that runs COMEX. They might have been getting more traction on their Bitcoin futures. Then I thought, well, maybe because they don't want to be in the futures business, it may even be deemed a conflict if they're involved in the futures business, if they're also going to be involved in sponsoring a Bitcoin ETF. So at the beginning of the year, VanEck and CBOE submitted a Bitcoin ETF back in January proposal. They resubmitted it after the government shut down, and then after the government opened again, they resubmitted it. And they're on pretty much the same time schedule as Bitwise, which got rejected last week. Now, normally when they reject these things, they reject them in bundles. They did not reject, although I think their last day they can reject or approve is Tuesday, May 21st, which is just a couple of days from now. Now, they may just reject it. They may run out the clock and say, okay, well, they can reject it or delay it. They'll probably, on the 21st, they can do three things. They can delay it, they can reject it, or they can approve it. Now, here's the speculation that I came up with, that probably other people are coming up with, and Anne looks like she's come up with it in the comments, is on May 21st, it could get approved. But I did a little more poking around. Here's why I think it's more possible, not more possible than a 0% chance that it gets approved, is there's a thing in New York called ETF's Global Market Roundtable. There's a link there, etfsglobalmarkets.com. Interesting that the sponsor of this conference is CBOE. CBOE is the company, along with VanEck. They're doing their ETF SolidX proposal to get an ETF approved by the SEC. So they are the big sponsor there. Okay, well, that doesn't tell you much. But at this ETF Global Roundtable is a speaker from the SEC. Okay, well, branch chief. But remember, this is about ETFs. This isn't about Bitcoin ETFs. But then you also have giving the keynote Hester Pierce. She's known as Crypto Mom, right? And she's going to be giving the keynote there. Now, you could imagine how it's set up that they could announce on this given day, if CBOE is there and Hester Pierce, Crypto Mom, is there, that this is the day that they actually approve of a Bitcoin ETF. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but at least you have a situation where everyone's in the same room. If they wanted to announce it, they could announce it and then make a big deal out of it, or they could just delay it and then not mention it, or they could reject it. Not quite sure what's going to happen, but I think it's inevitable that they'll approve one of these things. See, here's the thing. They've identified what the issues are, and those issues relate to storage of the cryptocurrency and the markets, and having proper market surveillance agreements. So those are not insurmountable problems. They just need to get satisfied, comfortable that those things can be taken care of. And again, they may take a year, they may take 2 years, they may take 3 years, but they're not trying to solve the impossible. All right. I want to thank you guys for listening. Let's see what the mug stackers are saying in the comments. We got Ann Holloman, Aaron Gorman, Chuck E. Cheese token bubble will surely burst, and then until then there are monies to be made. Yep. I mean, that's happened 4 times already. These cryptocurrencies have run up, then they come down. The thing is, though, each bubble is bigger than the last. But the idea that the bubble's going to burst and they're going to go away is wrong. Well, that's my opinion. I mean, it may go away, but I don't think so. Maybe it goes away in years from now. But the point is that if this was going to burst and go away, it would have happened in 2011, 2013, 2017. It just keeps going and it gets bigger each time. Ken Singsta says, greeting muggers. Philip Quinn says, I'm ready for some thoughtful analysis with some side order of humor. I haven't been too funny tonight, though. I haven't been too funny tonight. Philip Quinn stores his mugs at Brinks. Yes, Fiona is here. Hi, team, she says. Philip may store his Smaulgld mugs, to the Texas Mug Depository. All right. The mugs in Fort Knox are styrofoam. They're fake. That's right. They're fake mugs. There are no mugs at Fort Knox. It's all a scam. All right. What else do we have? Remember, if you want your comment called out, you need to put in SMAULGLD, and then I can see your comment. It's hard for me to read through all the comments and comment on them. Internet tough guy, how long can the crypto bubble last in your opinion? Depends on how big it gets or if it gets big at all. It's hard to say. I don't know. I don't know anything other than my speculation is I think Wall Street has shown all the signs that they've invested a lot of money in this. And I think the only way they're going to get their return on investment is if they pump it up. And they start selling this stuff to institutional investors and getting them to store it and getting them to buy it and getting them to trade it and how long it lasts, I don't know. I would think it probably would last longer than the non-Wall Street bubbles, because the Wall Street bubbles, what happened, the retail bubbles is everyone rushes in and then it goes high and then everyone says, holy, why do I even own this? And then they sell it and then everyone sells and it just gets a big speculative sell-off. So I have no idea. Jack, Andrew Yang has no idea what Bitcoin is. He just wants to be president. What's interesting is I didn't cover that tonight. I'll show it to you now that you mentioned it. I did have something on Yang, but I put it in 2020, which we're not going to talk about tonight. Maybe I won't show you. But anyway, the thing about Yang is he thinks that we need to put more money in crypto. He's a big proponent of the cryptocurrency. He's not going to win, but he's a big crypto fan. All right. Let's see what other comments we have. Ken Singsta. Smaulgld, for stocks, options, or borrowing and then resale, is this even possible in Bitcoin? I can see futures contracts, but options even possible? Absolutely. They're doing all this stuff. There's companies, I don't remember the name of them, that lend. They have all the same Wall Street stuff. Hypothecation, rehypothecation, Bitcoin loans, Bitcoin banks. They have all that stuff. Yeah, that's why they're drooling over it. It's basically, if you can take an entirely new asset class and throw all the financial products around it, it's huge money. It's like a gold rush. They found a new asset that they can financialize. You have to look at it. At least you don't have to look at it. That's how I look at it. All right. What else? Seth Shepard, Smaulgld, what are your top 3 favorite coins? I don't really have them. I would say, though, if you're looking at this space, what the institutions are doing, and according to Grayscale, they raised 44, 41, $45 million. No, going once, going twice. They rose $45 million in the first quarter, and I think $44 million of it was Bitcoin. And that is all you need to know. So I would think that for novices and for institutions, that Bitcoin is the oldest, the largest. None of them are safe, but that's not the point. I mean, you can lose all your money in all of them, but the idea is that Bitcoin is the one that people know. And then you move down from there. The best way to make your determination is go to CoinMarketCap. You can at least see what the top 10 coins are. I did find it was the greatest thing. I think it's under Charlie Lee's Twitter feed somewhere. He shows over 10 years how the top 10 has changed so many times, but that Litecoin was always in the top 10. So that's a way of looking at it. But then you got to research what each coin does. And if anyone's interested, I can do, I don't know if it's a little overkill, but like a show on each coin in the top 10 and what it purports to do and how long it's been around and who's been around, who's been backing it and what the price history has been. And that's a pretty deep dive, but that would give you some indication of what they're all about. Yeah, then there's Abra, and there's all these different apps now to buy and sell cryptos. All right, let's see if there's anything else. Okay, Jack. The other day on Bloomberg Radio, they muttered Bitcoin is not a security and trailed off quickly. It was so weird. No, Bitcoin is not a security. It's not. I mean, the SEC has already said it's not. My analysis of it is it's not. It doesn't meet the Howey test. That doesn't mean that it's unregulated. It just means it's not regulated by the SEC. It doesn't mean it's not taxable. It just means that the SEC doesn't regulate. Smaulgld, did you hear about the company Coinbase acquired? I think you're talking about, or they're trying to acquire the Expo, which is the company that does the storage. Oh, Fidelity was trying to acquire it too. Yeah. Yeah, well, Fidelity wants to have storage too. Fidelity has been eyeing this crypto stuff for 4 or 5 years. They're just going to come out with their launch in the next couple of weeks of their crypto trading platform, and it's only going to be, yeah, it's Expo, X-A-P-O, except they're only going to just launch their crypto trading platform for institutions in a couple of weeks. But I think in a year or two, they, TD Ameritrade, Charles Schwab, E-Trade, all of them will have their own crypto trading, and they'll compete with Coinbase. That's why Coinbase, if they were smart, they go public soon to raise a lot of capital to fight off the big established trading companies that are moving into cryptocurrency. Yeah, there it is. Expo of the Fort Knox of storage, says Ann. Yeah. Tossing Molotovs. Smaulgld. Aren't the Aussie mugs all face? Absolutely. You know, Roger Henley, thankfully, he had a problem the other day. He went to do another mug, one of his knockoff mug videos. Now, he did one where he took his, what he called the Smaulgld Hyper Classic mug, which is some cheap plastic thing that he scribbled on and made it look like a Smaulgld, a real Smaulgld mug. He took it to the Outback and he started feeding kangaroos out of it, calling them small snacks. Well, anyway, he was going to do another video. But apparently the animals didn't participate, or they weren't cooperative, or they weren't out when he went. But yes, the Australian mugs are all fake. And then Prashanthi Girl, another one of the Smaulgld subscribers, she's got counterfeit mugs down there too. Yeah, you can't trust an Australian-made mug. That is definitely a fact. Let me show you what Tossing Molotovs is talking about with these. It's really pathetic that they... Look at this. Here's Prashanthi Girl. See, look, she just tapes on paper onto a mug and feeds it to the cow there. Yep. Here's another one. This is supposedly an espresso mug. Look how fake that looks. The spider on the wall there. But the worst ones are the plastic ones that... let's see if we have those. Here you go. He also makes the SD Bully ones. There's Roger's Smaulgld Hyper Classic mug. Who would buy that? I guess he figures you could put... He taped on a QR code, I guess. Maybe that's the Smaulgld QR code. But really, if you're going to buy a Smaulgld mug, you got to go with the classics. I mean, like that. Look at that. Super classic, classic, travel mug, espresso mug. I mean, the Smaulgld mugs. Even pet balls. I mean, look at this. That's the real stuff. Beer steins. There you go, beer stein. Actually, when you look at a beer stein, what you really want to see is beer in the stein, and bingo star. There it is. Beer in the stein. For those of you who are HODL Fuel fans, I bought some HODL Fuel. There's some nice pictures of Smaulgld mugs around coffee makers making HODL Fuel. So it's, let me show you. Well, we'll just leave it with that. Mug life, baby. We rocking the beat. All right. And Smaulgld, do a show on wallets. Well, you mean going through all the cold storage stuff? Okay, Ken Singsta, if unlimited options are possible, they can the price be controlled? I'll stay on until you clarify that comment. I don't know what that means, so please, I don't know what you mean. If unlimited options are possible, then can the price be controlled? I don't know what that means. All right. Tossing Molotovs, maybe just an evaluation of the crypto space for long-term holding is all you have to do. And that is all you need to know. Central banks are buying gold. Oh, in fact, there was a central banker who said that central banks were not buying gold for de-dollarization purposes. They were buying it for diversification. I happen to agree with that. Ann says, how was the HODL fuel? It's pretty good. It was good. You know, I was thinking of having the guy on who sells the coffee. I think it's a decent product. I bought 2 packages of the... Let me see what did I buy? Yeah, it's quite, the stuff is, it's got a hashtag LTC. I'll try the other ones. I like coffee a lot, so I will try. It's a good price, and it's good. You could pay with Litecoin, so it's good. I wanted to show you, I think Johnny Litecoin, he took a picture of, I gotta find it, of the Smaulgld mug under his, he was selling, it's not this one. This is Carl Joseph DeMarco. That's his mug, but that's not the HODL fuel picture. But there's a picture of the Smaulgld mug underneath the HODL fuel. Let me think. If I can't find it, I'm gonna let you go. Maybe I'll play you the Muggin' for Life song. But appreciated you guys sticking around to the end. I may not find this for you, but if not, I'll give you some music. And then I'll send you on your way, unless... Oh, here it is. Here's HODL fuel. This is not the picture I was thinking, but I'll leave you with that. There it is. That's what I bought. And I made it, and I put it in the travel mug. And took it to work that way, so... Very good. Also, I sell coffee on my site. I don't sell HODL fuel, but go check that out. I sell the Kona coffee and another couple of other types, all on Smaulgld.com. That is a way of helping out the site, is by purchasing the products on the Smaulgld site, including the gold and silver. Not investment advice to buy gold or silver, but if you're going to do it, and you've made your decision, Smaulgld gets a small commission if you buy from SD Bullion, Money Metals Exchange, or Golden Eagle coins from the links on the site or below this BitChute or YouTube. So please consider doing that, or please consider making a one-time donation or becoming a Subscribe Star Mug Stacker Club member, or becoming a patron member, or making a one-time or recurrent donation on PayPal, or sending a check or money order or any item of value to Smaulgld LLC, P.O. Box 714, Dover, New Hampshire 03820. So, thank you very much. Let me see if there's anything else left in the comments. If not, we're going to give you the Bernie countdown. Philip bought some silver in advance of the possible Ohio sales tax. All right. All right, everyone. Well, I think it's time now to thank Lewis for teaching us about the cryptocurrencies tonight and tomorrow. If you join him on Saturday night, he's going to talk about the silver, and then on Sunday, he's going to talk about the gold. So, if there's no more questions, I'm going to give you the 10-second Bernie countdown. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1%, 0. Have a good night.